The trunk's lock was broken, and I discovered that murder weapon while inspecting the body. The murder weapon? You mean Edgeworth's knife? No. When I found the body, this knife was stuck in it. The knife from the SL9 incident, serial killer Joe Dark's knife. I couldn't just leave that knife in him, so I took it out and stabbed him with another knife. That would be Edgeworth's knife. That's right. Even though he was already dead, my hands were shaking at the thought of stabbing him. That's why I ended up cutting my hand. And that is the reason for the bandage on your hand. Yes, it seems that I got blood on the victim's shoes as well. And then she saw me just as I plunged the knife in him. Miss Starr, huh? Why did you need to hide Dark's knife so badly? It took a lot of work to finally close the Dark case 2 years ago. It was over with. I didn't ever want it to be opened again. My intent was to prevent that by whatever means possible. So you hid Dark's knife. The weapon used to stab the detective was evidence in the Joe Dark case. If word got out, which it would, the reporters would have a field day with that. So you wrapped the knife in your scarf and hid it. In Edgeworth's exhaust pipe. Right, then I called my sister. To tell her what happened and to ask her to hide the knife that was inside my muffler. You asked Emma. I didn't want anyone on the force to know about this. That would explain why Emma is so confident about Lana's innocence. Speaking of phone calls, I had a bad feeling about one of them that day. A bad feeling? The truth is, after I received those orders from Chief Gant, the first thing I did was make a phone call. A phone call to Patrolman Jake Marshall. Marshall? Why on earth would you call him? The lead investigator for the SL9 incident had been murdered. I wanted the fact to be kept hidden and I needed help. He was the only other person I could trust, or at least I thought I could trust him at the time. However, it seems that after I spoke to him, he went off on an escapade on his own. Oh, you mean... Not wanting the case to die, he decided to take things into his own hands. He disguised himself as Detective Goodman and tried to steal the evidence. He had already stolen the ID card, but it seems he still hadn't made up his mind to break into the evidence room. After my phone call, any remaining doubts he had must have disappeared. So a phone call caused the incident in the evidence room. I'm afraid that's all I can tell you. But Lana, you've earned my respect, Mr. Wright, both as a defense attorney and as an investigator. Now please, don't pursue this any further in court tomorrow. Tomorrow's trial. There's only one way to drive off Lana's demons. I've got to get to the bottom of everything. Detective Goodman's real murderer. And what went down in the chief's office 2 years ago. Finale, guys. Finale. Let it snow. Gute Nacht wünsche ich dir. Du verpasst tatsächlich das Beste. Aber das kann mal passieren. Okay. This is the defendant lobby, alright, but there's no defendant. I've been trying to reach Lana all morning. Where could she be? And where's Emma, for that matter? It almost seems as if something's been happening behind the scenes. Edgeworth, knowing you've already figured it out. Who the owner of the 7777 ID number as that is? Well, I have a pretty strong hunch. Looks like I'm not the only one who's figured it out. You know, the only reason this trial didn't reach a verdict yesterday is because there was still room for doubt regarding this ID record. If that number does belong to whom you suspect, then no doubt will remain. After all, he hasn't been officially charged with anything. True, not yet. In any event, once all doubt has been removed from that list, I can call for a ruling. 5 minutes, Wright, and Chief Prosecutor Sky will be found guilty. But she didn't do it! I figured you'd say as much. That's why I came here to hear what you have to say. This is the first time he's ever done something like this. Lana's hiding something, and the only way we'll ever know the truth is to draw it out of her. The truth? Everything goes back to the SL9 incident. Don't be stupid. Today is the last day of the trial. We don't have time to reminisce about the past. That depends on you. If she's found guilty, you will lose your only chance to find out what really happened. I'll think about it. See you in court, Wright? This is it. If I'm ever going to find out what Chief Gant has on her, it's now. Court is now in session for the trial of Miss Lana Sky. The defense is ready, Your Honor. The prosecution is ready, Your Honor. Normally, this is when the prosecution puts forth its opening statement. But before that, the police chief has a proposal to make. Chief Gant? Morning, folks. How's everyone doing? Hey, Aji. Been back to the pool yet? No, I've been drowning enough as it's in my work. Oh, that's a good one. Don't think I can top that. If you don't mind me asking, Chief, exactly what is this proposal of yours? Lana, that is to say, the defendant, has asked me if she could speak directly to the court. She wants to do what? Having heard what she intends to say, I feel she should be granted her request. In the end, it should save everyone a lot of time and trouble. Been back to the pool, Pepe, huh? What's this all about, defendant? I'd just like to make one simple request and I'll be finished. Well then, what's your request? Your Honor, I'd like you to put an immediate end to this trial. Huh? I confess to all charges against me. On February 21st of this year, I murdered Detective Bruce Goodman in the underground parking lot of the prosecutor's office. No, Lana! You can't! Your Honor, the defendant's claim does not change the defense's plea. In that case, Mr. Wright, I no longer require your services. But Lana! Your Honor, I hereby forfeit my right to an attorney. The prosecution may lack direct evidence against me, but it has sufficiently proven its case through testimony and circumstantial evidence. I would like you to render your verdict now, if you please. Huh. Well, the defendant certainly has the right to self-representation. Her request is legally valid, although this is an unprecedented situation. Indeed, it appears there is no further need to continue this trial. Even if Mr. Wright may feel otherwise, this can't be happening. It appears the time for the verdict has arrived. This court finds the defendant... Objection! One moment, Your Honor. Mr. Edgeworth. The prosecution has not yet proven the defendant guilty beyond reasonable doubt. Any ruling at this stage would certainly be premature. Come now, Worthy. I understand this is a difficult time for you. But why don't you just be a good little boy and keep your mouth shut, huh? Huh. I don't think I care for your tone, Chief Gant. What? Creating another fabrication to cover up your past mistakes. Sorry, but I'm no longer the naive little boy you would have me be. With this sudden confession from the defendant, it's obvious to me some kind of deal was struck behind the scenes. Some kind of deal, huh? Not everyone operates as you do, Worthy. Huh. I thought so. Your Honor, the prosecution would like to change its first witness. Oh, to whom? As its first witness, the prosecution would like to call Miss Emma Skye. I request the court hears her testimony. Mr. Edgeworth, I am exercising my right to self-representation. I don't think we need to continue. I don't care what you think, Miss Skye. The exposure of truth sometimes results in tragedy. However, no matter how tragic the truth may be, it would be an even greater tragedy to avert one's eyes from it. Very well, the court shall grant the prosecution's request. But that's okay with you, right, Chief Grant? Worthy, you will live to regret this. Mark my words. Miss Emma Skye, please take the stand. Looks like Edgeworth has decided to take the horse by the reins. Now then, witness, please state your name and occupation. My name is Emma Skye. My occupation? I am Lana's little sister and I want to be a scientific investigator. 2 years ago, you encountered the serial killer Joe Dark of the Joe Dark killings. Is this correct? Yes. I'm trying my hardest to forget about that though. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to recall those events one more time. Mr. Edgeworth, please remember, this trial concerns the murder of Detective Goodman. Is an incident that was resolved 2 years ago really all that relevant? Yes, it most certainly is. Well, okay then. He sure gave in fast. Now, please testify about what happened to you 2 years ago. The trip to yesteryear has finally begun. It's bound to lead to the truth behind this trial. Die wurde befragt von der Polizei, die Emma. I was waiting in my sister's office that day. A man came running in and took me hostage. Neil Marshall rescued me, but I'll never forget what I saw in that instant. The man raising up his knife and stabbed Mr. Marshall in the chest. It's a good thing you weren't harmed. I passed out, I don't remember much. That's understandable. However, please tell me, Mr. Edgeworth, what does this testimony have to do with Detective Goodman's murder? That will soon become apparent, Your Honor. You've got to admire him for his courage considering he has no evidence. Very well, the defense may begin its cross-examination. Weil Edgeworth dazwischen gesprungen ist. Ja, das ist mir auch gerade aufgefallen. The man raised up his knife and stabbed Mr. Marshall in the chest. So, wir haben im Autopsie-Report von Mr. Marshall stabbed in the back. Okay. That must been a real shock. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can still see it just as clearly. Tell us, what were you doing in that moment? I believe you testified that Joe Dark was holding you hostage. When lightning struck and the lights went out, Mr. Marshall jumped on Dark. I was thrown aside and the two began wrestling each other. Got you, Bess? Huh. I'm pretty sure I was watching them. Emma doesn't have any reason to lie. But Lana sure does. I need to get Emma to tell me as much about this as she can. Can you tell us about that? Mr. Marshall jumped on Dark. Just then, the lights went out. The lights? It was just about this time of the year. There was a terrible storm going on and lightning struck nearby. So the electricity went out. Wait a minute. It was pitch dark in that room. You shouldn't have been able to see anything, right? Right, but just then lightning flashed again outside. That sudden flash left an unforgettable image of the scene in my mind. See. I told the detective about what I saw then. The detective? Yes, Detective Goodman. He was in charge of the case. Detective Bruce Goodman, the victim. So you spoke with Detective Goodman about this 2 years ago? Yes, that's what's so scary about this trial. And you told Detective Goodman about what you saw? Yes, but at the time the words just wouldn't come out. That's why I drew a picture. Picture? Yes, I think she mentioned that before. Well, Mr. Wright, have you heard enough? This picture the witness drew, I believe it has very important meaning. But the list of evidence I was given 2 years ago didn't contain a picture. Witness, would you mind if we added this testimony to your, the statement to your testimony? Yes, Your Honor. I drew a picture of that scene once, but it seems to have been lost. Ha. Got you. Mr. Edgeworth? This little girl put all her heart into drawing that picture. And yet, you would insist on denying its existence? Huh? Hey, I'm not the bad guy. All I'm saying is that, as the prosecutor for that case, I wasn't handed such a picture. That may well be, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Behold, this is the evidence list for the SL9 incident. Please turn it over, Your Honor. Turn it over? Turn it... Oh, what is this? Yes, what is that? Hey, that's it. That's a picture I drew. Indeed, 2 men appear to be wrestling here. What's the meaning of this? What are you doing with that list? Me? Only the prosecutor in charge should have access to that list. Huh? These lists, they are different from each other. What? It would appear, Mr. Edgeworth, that the evidence list you were handed 2 years ago was incomplete. These 2 lists fit together form one. You can see marks here where they were torn apart from each other. So you see, Mr. Edgeworth, it's quite obvious what happened. 2 years ago, only half of the evidence in that case ever reached you. What? What? Order, order! But Miss Sky, why did you draw your picture on the back of such an important list? Because that's what Detective Goodman handed me in the questioning room, Your Honor. Hi, Frizzamiza. Wait a minute. If this list was torn in half, then that means... Your Honor? Are you alright, Mr. Wright? Your eyes are bulging from your head. If the evidence list was torn in half, then there might be more of the drawing on the back of Mr. Edgeworth's list. Yes, that's quite conceivable, Mr. Edgeworth. It's possible. Let's see. Is something wrong? Do you even have to ask? Sorry, Your Honor. There is indeed something drawn on the back of my list. Is that what the fuck? That's that thing. That thing that was dancing in the evidence room. Clearly, this act of vandalism is the work of a certain chief of detectives. I guess he was out of scrap paper. Evidence list restored and updated in the court record. Very well. Witness, will you please testify about this picture you drew 2 years ago? Huh? Oh, yes, Your Honor. What's wrong with Emma? She seemed to be thinking about something when she was looking at the picture. This is the picture I drew 2 years ago. The flash of lightning was so bright all I could see were shadows. After that, I must have fainted. This picture shows exactly what I saw in that instant. To think a flash of lightning could burn such an image in your mind. Thanks to that, though, she was able to show us exactly what she saw. Well, I don't see any contradictions here. This clearly shows Joe Dark about to murder Prosecutor Neil Marshall. The defense may now begin its cross-examination. Did you draw this picture right after the incident? I think I drew it 2 or 3 days later. At first I was in such a state of shock that I couldn't do anything. During that time, the investigation team was reorganized. Detective Goodman was placed in charge, under the direction of Damon Gunt and Lana Skye. 2 or 3 days later, the memory should still have been fresh in her mind. Excuse me, witness? But can you please tell us why this picture is painted all black? Come on, bro. So at the time, you didn't even know if it was Mr. Marshall who had come to your rescue. No, I couldn't see him clearly. The lightning was so bright and I was knocked to the floor. You were knocked to the floor? Dark had a tight grip on me, but when Mr. Marshall jumped on him, I was knocked away. I turned around, and that's when the lightning flashed. Poor Emma. I'm glad she wasn't hurt. What happened after the lightning flashed? You mean you didn't see the actual murder take place? No, I'm sorry. The flash of lightning only drove off the darkness for a split second, not only that, but the trauma of the situation understandably caused the witness to faint. Do you really need to torture this girl any further? What? Hey, I'm not the bad guy here. Anyway, this picture shows exactly what I saw in that instant. Sieht irgendwie nicht so aus. Sorry for asking so many times, but are you sure you draw exactly what you saw? Of course, this is the exact scene. It wasn't influenced in any way from your talks with the detectives. Detectives? Are you insinuating we somehow manipulated her memory, Mr. Wright? No, of course not. I'd better watch out or he might find some crazy way to cut my salary. I drew this picture before I heard anything from the detectives. So I don't think anyone's story would have influenced me. Mr. Wright? Is there something that's bothering you about this picture? Huh? Oh well. That's strange. She claims this is exactly the scene that was imprinted in her mind. And yet, there's clearly a contradiction here. Also ich muss an dieser Stelle etwas zeigen. Das ist mir klar. Ich muss safe an dieser Stelle etwas zeigen. Es kommen 2 Sachen in Frage. Okay? Entweder der Autopsiebericht oder die Waffe, I guess. Waffe versus Autopsiebericht. Chat, you failed. Autopsiebericht. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this picture the witness drew contains a blatant contradiction. What? But I still remember it, just like it was yesterday. Mr. Wright, perhaps it would be faster if you simply pointed out this contradiction for us. What part of this picture contradicts the autopsy report. Die Waffe? The contradiction, of course, lies here. Take a look at the knife the man is holding. If you look closely, you can see its tip is broken. Even I don't have to look closely to see what that, Mr. Wright. Mr. Wright, look at the evidence. See the murder weapon? Its tip is broken too. If I recall, the tip of the knife was found broken off in the victim's body. It was the conclusive piece of evidence that proved Joe Dark was the murderer. I'm afraid it's not so simple, Emma. And where, pray tell, could you possibly see a problem? It's obvious, really. The victim suffered a single stab wound to the back. If the victim was only stabbed once, then the murder weapon should not yet be broken. Perhaps the knife was broken beforehand. Sorry, but I'm afraid that's not possible. The tip of the knife was found inside the victim's body. If it was broken beforehand, it couldn't possibly wind up there. That's right, but... okay. The tip of the knife was undeniably discovered within the victim's body. The only possible explanation is the witness's memory is mistaken. That's why I asked her so many times if she was sure she remembered correctly. I believe you were annoyed at the time, but she was sure she remembered correctly. But there's no other way to explain this inconsistency. Not so fast, Mr. Edgeworth. There is another explanation. Have you forgotten already? About a little something called falsified evidence? You're treading on thin ice, Wright. All I'm saying is that this broken knife tip might be the piece of evidence that was forged. You can't deny the possibility. No. Ugh. Die Tische sind ragefest. Order, order, order! Are you saying the investigation really was corrupted? Your Honor, please allow me to once again go over the events that took place the day of the murder. The police department and the prosecutor's office were holding a ceremony that day. After receiving the King of Prosecutors award at the ceremony, Neil Marshall questioned Joe Dark along with Damon Gunt. During this questioning, Joe Dark fled the room. Prosecutor Marshall chased after him and was killed by Dark. It is my belief that somewhere in this story there is a lie. Huh? I'm not lying. The man really was holding up a broken knife. If that's true, then there's no other way around it. This could not have been the actual murder weapon. There must have been another broken knife. What are the chances of there being two broken knives? Another broken knife beside Joe Dark's. Could there have been one? If the witness is this adamant about the accuracy of what she saw, it can't just be explained away by a simple observational error. Mr. Wright. In that instant, Emma really did see a broken knife. I assume then that you have some information about this other broken knife. If so, please feel free to enlighten us. The murder weapon was already broken prior to the murder. There's only one way. Take a look at this. Here's the real murder weapon. Das Foto. The answer lies in the past. 2 years in the past. Right here inside this picture. This is a picture of the award ceremony. What is it, Mr. Edgeworth? It's the broke murder weapon. Notice the award Prosecutor Marshall is holding. That a broken knife. As we earlier concluded, the knife in the drawing was Not Joe Dark's knife. That being the case, the knife the witness saw was in all likelihood from this award.